Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and we are here with my post-combine series to continue it as we get ready for the 2023 NFL draft. And I've done most of the positions at this point, just have a couple left. So you can see other videos on other positions. You can also find all of those charts and this chart up on the website, www.theFFForge. This has all of the data from the 2023 NFL Combine. You can download it if you want to mess with things on your own, sort columns differently, do whatever you want, your own analysis. Just a quick explanation of this chart. Down here, you can see the color scheme. I think it's pretty obvious. Anything here like this, they're within the average, the middle 50% of the population. The population in this information that's used to dictate how well they got colored is based on the 2022 and 2023 NFL Combine data. Does not include the Pro Day information. However, over here, this does include the Pro Day information from 2022 in the population, so that is a slight difference. There are reasons that I haven't done that over on the left-hand side of the screen there, but this is an area that ends up creating my prospect scores, which is how I currently have them ordered. And what it is I took their masses, so I took their pounds divided by their height in inches, and then I ran these columns, these athletics, through that lens in order to determine how good their athletics are for their size. These are not any kind of perfect prospect scores. These aren't my final prospect scores, the order that I think these guys should be drafted or anything like that. There will be 5 tight ends in this video, and previously last year I did this same exact process, and I came up with a few names that stood out that I think are worth noting. Those were Isaiah Likely, Chigozie Okonkwo, Daniel Bellinger, and Jelani Woods. So you can see this process does yield some solid results. Those are only 4 of a few other names that also came up. They were the 4 most successful. They were also the 4 that I had at the top of my list, because I did kind of organize them from favorite to least favorite last season. I think I did solid there. This season, I am much more up to date on the draft class. I am aware of the guys that are going first round. And one reason that you may not see some of those names on this list is because if they didn't have a size adjusted score down here, that means that they did not compete in enough things at the Combine. And for the most part, a lot of the guys who aren't competing in a lot of things at the Combine are the guys who have like first round draft grades on them, are comfortable with where they're going to get drafted. And so this could really only hurt them more than not. And so in that sense, when I'm looking at their physical traits and their athletic traits to come to a picture of who these guys might be at the next level, I don't have a lot to work on, so that's probably why they don't make this list, not because I don't like them. That being said, I am looking at just the physical and the athletic traits for these guys, so that is a limitation to this analysis. However, this season, I am then backing up what I'm finding or verifying or doing the opposite of verifying and finding out that things may not be as they seem based on these numbers by looking at some scouting reports, so that way I'm just a little bit more accurate for you. That is about it. Just let you know, too, I'm not looking in any kind of order that I give these guys. Doesn't necessarily mean that's how I like them. Doesn't mean that's how I think they should be drafted. I like all guys, all prospects, first rounders, undrafted free agents. I can have a favorite my guy that's probably going to go in the 7th round. That's always possible. So it's just guys that I find intriguing and unique. And we're going to start off with a guy who himself thinks that he is the most unique player in this draft. And that's going to be right up top here, Darnell Washington, who is 6'7", and there is absolutely nothing wrong with his athletics. But check out the size-adjusted athletics for him. Some pretty darn nice numbers. That's why he's at the top of this list. He can move for his size, and that's definitely true. Darnell was an absolute beast in the on-field drills at the Combine. He looked like the best darn tight end out there. And in his media session, which I did catch from the Combine, I wrote a couple of notes here that we'll just go over. I wrote that he looks like a basketball player. I also said that he was humble, and the reason that I said that he was humble was because he was asked a question about, do you think that you're the best tight end in the NFL draft? His answer to that was, he felt that he was the most unique tight end in this draft, but not the best tight end in the draft. And he also said that he feels that he has room to grow, and he sees himself like a Mercedes Lewis. All that is good stuff, and it really shows his maturity that he was able to distinguish the fact that he thinks that he's the most unique, not the best tight end in this draft. So I really appreciated that about him, and I also love that he compared himself, looks up to Mercedes Lewis. Of all players, I think that's, once again, going back to maturity, a pretty mature answer, but also, I mean, cool. If you could pick a guy who's had, the ultimate professional at the tight end and has evolved his game as his athletics maybe have receded, as he's aged, and adapted his game to fit what he can do and excelled at it. I don't think that there is a thing that you cannot expect Darnell Washington to be able to do at the next level. So, Rob Gronkowski, watch out. Yes, you heard me correctly. I think that Darnell Washington has a once-in-a-generation combination of physical and athletic skills. I would take him first off of the board at the position in a year where there's really a lot of good tight end talent, a lot of interesting tight ends, a solid tight end year, but I would take him first off the board personally. One thing that's additionally super exciting about him is that one of his abilities in college was his blocking skill set. That was one of his best abilities. Yet he absolutely shined at the combine, in the on-field drills, in the receiving drills. So, all the better for him. The only drawback is his massive height that can bring along some issues. 6'7" tends to be a bit of a disadvantage for tight ends in some ways, that he may be able to overcome some of those things based on his scouting report, but also in the run blocking game, it's just hard for such a big man to sit his butt down real low and be able to drive the defenders back. It's a leverage thing. I still think that he has a once-in-a-generation type of ceiling at the very least here. So I'm going to be putting a very strong first-round draft grade on Darnell Washington. He should be able to fill the traditional Y tight end role very nicely, and he might be Gronk-like in the sense that he might be able to create some of the worst mismatches that you could find in the receiving game. So that's Darnell Washington. So let's move on to the next guy here, and it's going to be Payne Durham, who is right here. And Payne is 6'6". Overall, Payne is an average prospect physically and athletically. But the reason that he made my list was because of the fact that he really impressed me in the on-field drills portion of the combine. Technically, he impressed me in between the drills when the coachings or the trainers were sitting there explaining the next drill to them, maybe encouraging them, telling them what they need to do better, something like that. I don't know, but that's where he impressed me, because every single time he was at the front of the group, listening, soaking things in, just taking in the whole process. And also, every single drill, he was either the first guy to go or the second guy to go. Maybe he was the third guy in one drill. But he was just super actively participating in this whole process. You can tell that he absolutely loves the game and loves the process. And if he doesn't work out in the NFL, I bet you that he still works out on the sidelines as a coach or a trainer, something like that. I can guarantee it. I can also guarantee you that he is going to be giving his all every single down that he is on the field. I don't know about being a starter at the NFL level, but I'm sure that he can bring some quality reps to a team as a number 2 tight end. He has a prototypical build, and athletically, he is nothing special. Most likely, he's going to need to be used like a traditional tight end. Because of my faith in his work ethic and his attitude, I am going to be putting a late 3rd round draft grade on Payne Durham. And that is going to bring us to Zack Kuntz, who is right here, another massive dude. The same disadvantages that applied to Darnell Washington due to his height are definitely going to be applying to Kuntz. As you can see here, Zach's his athletics absolutely shine. He had the best athletics of anybody at the combine at the tight end position. It's incredibly impressive, and if it wasn't for Darnell Washington, I do guarantee you that Zach would have gotten a lot more buzz coming out of the combine. He looked good in the on-field drills, and I know that he comes in at the same height as Darnell Washington did. However, I think he's at least like an inch taller. Like maybe Darnell Washington is 6'6" and 7/8", and Zack Kuntz is like 6'7" and 6/8" or something like that. Zack Kuntz was the tallest guy out on the field. And due to his athletics and some issues with him in the blocking game, as to be expected at this size, I think that Kuntz should work very well as a flex tight end. That's going to be a guy who you would flex out from like the tight end spot into a big slot role or all the way out onto the perimeter on offense, a weapon in like a spread offense. And so for those reasons, I'm going to give Zack a solid, I guess, second round draft grade. I'm not sure that he will ever be able to fulfill the traditional role of a tight end, the traditional responsibilities of a tight end at this next level in the NFL. But as an offensive weapon, his combine results are simply too good to be overlooked. And that will bring us to Luke Musgrave, who is 6'6". And Luke has a very prototypical build, but it is his athletics that helped make him stand out to me, as you can see right there. He has a very good first step there at the 10 split. If you look at that, excellent, some might even say. And he also had a very good to solid vert and broad here. Those assets should make him solid in the blocking game as well as in the short to intermediate passing game. I'd imagine that he will be effective in both the red zone and on third down situations. And although his 40 time is fine, it's probably not enough to make him a true vertical threat. And that's kind of where my little bit of analysis ended. And so then I start looking at a scouting report, and after looking at his scouting report, I found that my read on him, it wasn't perfect. His blocking leaves some to be desired yet, and he has a knack for being able to slip behind coverage all the way up to the third level. So I said that I didn't think he had enough speed to really be effective in the vertical game, but he does that without using pure speed. But to me, I find this to be a positive thing. He still can develop further. He has the correct tools to fix some of like the blocking game that he may not be great in. He has a strong, sturdy base. He just maybe needs to learn that technique a little bit better. I would take a chance on Luke Musgrave over Payne Durham, but not before Zack Kuntz, which lands him pretty solidly in the third round for me. I also did catch Luke's media session, and here are my notes from that. I wrote that he was lanky with a mustache, and also he is a meat and potatoes guy, but with maybe a splash of hot sauce. And what I mean by that is, well, the wide receiver and cornerback positions are probably just a plate of hot sauce, no meat and potatoes. And somebody like George Kittle's probably like a plate of half meat and potatoes and half hot sauce. So, he just has a little bit of George Kittle to him, a little bit of flair. He's not strictly meat and potatoes, which I think helps to loosen things up probably in the locker room a little bit more than somebody who's all business. Then we have Davis Allen up next, who is 6'6", and we have another traditional inline Y, traditional tight end right here. He could probably add a few pounds yet onto his frame. And right over here, his vert and his broad are what stood out to me outside of Zack Kuntz. That is the best combination of those two drills that we see in this draft class. The raw power and explosiveness that he should be able to be generating with those numbers tells me that he should be a great blocker and possibly an asset in the short yardage passing game. Unfortunately, the scouting report on him is almost the exact opposite of a lot of what you see here by the numbers from his combine results. And thus, I'm going to put a 5th round draft grade on him. He was asked to do a lot of different things in college, and versatility brings value as a number 3 tight end on a roster. I also wonder if he's going to, if he gets the chance here to hone in on specific facets of the game and receive some coaching up in those areas, if he can't become a solid number 2 tight end down the road, because I do think that he has the tool set to develop into a better tight end than he was in college. And now let's move on to the notable names that I have at the tight end position. And then we'll wrap this up with a few guys who I also caught their media sessions for at the Combine. We'll cover those notes. So first up with the notable names is Sam Laporta, and he is actually one of my favorite tight ends in this draft class. I just had a limited amount of slots that I was working with. I absolutely love Sam as a versatile move tight end, and I am going to predict that either the Raiders, Patriots, or the 49ers end up drafting Sam. So there's my prediction there for Sam Laporta. Wouldn't mind if the Packers drafted him. And then we're going to have Brenton Strange coming up next. And Brenton feels like a bit like a tweener between an H-back and a traditional tight end. Brenton Strange is interesting to me. He's not really the right size for an H-back. And honestly, he may not be viewed like I am viewing him by at least most NFL teams. But if a team could work with an oversized H-back, and I really don't think that there's a hard limit on what size an H-back, how tall they can be. It's just generally the skill set lends itself to a little bit shorter guys even than him. But if they could work in, if that's not a big deal to them size-wise for that role, or if they have that role, and like San Francisco, let's say, they just need a guy who could fulfill some duties both as a traditional tight end and in the H-back role, then you could do worse than Brenton Strange. You could do better, but you could also do worse. So I like him. I find him interesting. And the last guy up here on the notables names list is Cameron Letu, just a guy that I am actually kind of familiar with from his college days. Find interesting, think he's a solid prospect and should make it in the NFL. So I think he'll be a solid draft pick at some point in the draft. There's a few names that you may notice haven't been said, and luckily I did catch their Combine interviews or media sessions. We'll wrap this up. If you have any observations of your own from anything that you've seen of these guys in their college career, whatever, feel free to put them out in the comments. I'd love to get involved in that conversation. Now on to my observations from the media session, starting off with Will Mallory. He seems like a regular dude. This is what I wrote. He seems like a regular dude that you'd meet up with at the bar for a beer. He appears to have a touch or three of frat bro, but he doesn't remind me of like the crazy frat leader that gets murdered in any horror movie. He's not that guy. He's one of the guys in the background that the protagonist just they get murdered off screen, and then the protagonist happens to run across their body later on in the episode, in the movie or episode. So I don't know how much all of that really helps with prospecting Will Mallory. I will say he didn't really impress me in the on-field drills. But if you look at, he does have like a really good 40 time, I think the best of this draft class. So there are some interesting things about Will, and I think he started out not impressing me early on in the drills, and then maybe he impressed me once I got to more of the receiving stuff, probably because of that speed. That might have been a little bit more of the case with him. Regardless, let's get on to a couple of names that you're probably wondering if will ever get said. The first one up is Michael Mayer, and I wrote that he has an all-American look. He's got the shoulders, he's got the jawline, he is built like a guy who goes to the gym and knows what he's doing, like a Greek god, kind of. He's well-spoken, and he's an all-business kind of dude. He comes across as a guy who can lead others, and so that last note is a very good thing. All business is definitely not a bad thing. You don't want every single guy in your locker room to be overly exciting, fun. You need some leaders and some all business kinds of dudes as well. So he does bring that, and I think that those traits really fit who he is on the field. He's a bit of can do everything at the draft, in the on-field drills at the Combine. He didn't necessarily, I was expecting to be impressed by him. I was expecting him to absolutely stand out. And really how he stood out was the fact that he was just kind of maybe he looked like top 3-ish in pretty much every single drill, but he never looked like the best tight end out there. But I've since seeing the draft Combine kind of figured that out about him, is he's versatile. He can do everything really well. And so, yeah, he's a great prospect. Then we have the tight end that a lot of people think will be going first in the draft, one that I need to look into more. I don't know much about Dalton Kincaid and who he is on the field, but I did catch his media session, and this is what I wrote. I said that he looks like a 28-year-old weekend warrior from your local YMCA. He may be a bit unsure of himself yet. I don't know if I was reading, I put maybe there for a reason. I don't know if I was reading into something, seeing something incorrectly when I said that. I could be so off base. You would think for a guy who's supposed to be going first in the draft, he probably feels sure about himself, but not always, maybe not. And that would probably be a little bit of a knock if he doesn't have that overconfidence that a lot of football players have. Anyways, I did find out that he is recovering from an injury, and maybe that would explain the lack of muscle tone that I kind of picked up on, that 28-year-old weekend warrior statement, where he just, it doesn't look like he hits the gym every day, just looks fit enough. So, yeah, that's all of the tight ends that caught my eye and more. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will be back tomorrow night with the offensive line. Hope you're enjoying this series. Bye-bye.